Chapter 469. As they spoke, Yuqin walked out of the room a bit late. She didn't forget to close the door. At this time, Baiyu had already rushed out a few steps. She quickly passed through the long hallway and pounced forward. She hugged Assistant Meng and started rubbing her face. Even though Assistant Meng was sturdy, she still staggered from the long-legged chick Baiyu. All she could do was push her down with a face full of disgust. "I've been certified as an agent. Be careful that I don't ask you guys to come over and drink with those high-ranking officials and rich businessmen. Yeah, I have to be a bit more handsome." Baiyu giggled and didn't take it seriously at all. At this time, Shui Yuan and Clara came over to greet them. Though they weren't as exaggerated as Baiyu, they were quite close to each other. It could be seen that this Assistant Meng had a good relationship with the BHD group. Only Yuqin walked straight to Luo Nan's side and bowed slightly. "Mr. Luo." Luo Nan nodded in response, but he remembered something. "I've wasted quite a bit of your time today. I think I heard Baiyu mention that you have an appointment tonight? I'm just watching a show with a friend. I'll be there when the time comes." Yuqin took a deep breath and her voice became a bit softer. "Mr. Luo, do you want to come along?" No thanks. I still have things to do. I'll probably leave in a bit." Luo Nan and Yuqin chatted for a bit before he heard his name called. It started when Baiyu asked Assistant Meng what she was going to do. Assistant Meng said that she was going to buy something for Shi Wei. "Let Luo Nan run some errands." No need. You guys are busy." Assistant Meng shook her head fiercely. She had a kind temperament. Without Chief Wu by her side, she certainly wouldn't order people around. "If I don't do this, then why would I be an assistant?" Baiyu urged with all her might. "Don't be silly, sis. If there's a strong worker here, then use him. Don't be shy." Luo Nan stared at Baiyu with wide eyes. Were little girls nowadays this vicious? Just because she fell asleep while you were dancing, you want to sell her? Assistant Meng was really silly. She didn't know where Baiyu's enthusiasm came from. She could only shake her head and refuse. Seeing Assistant Meng insist, Baiyu didn't push it. She chuckled and said, "Silly sis, you're magnanimous. But this way, I don't have the face to speak for him." Huh. Luo Nan and Assistant Meng didn't understand. Baiyu stuck out her thumb and poked the back of her shoulder. "This man can be considered a friend of mine. Apart from being lazy and sleeping a lot, there's nothing wrong with him. By the way, he wasn't late to deliver tea this morning, was he?" "No. The service is quite good." "Yes, I can." "That's good. You didn't embarrass me." As Baiyu spoke, she suddenly swung at Luo Nan's chest. It looked intimate, but the strength behind her swing was truly fierce. If it weren't for the fact that Luo Nan had put in enough effort to temper his muscles and bones, he might have gotten a chest ache. However, Baiyu acted as though nothing had happened. Her eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. "In that case, Sister Meng, seeing that he is a competent lackey, can you satisfy his humble wish and give him an autographed photo of Sister Weiwei?" Meng's assistant was stunned for a second before she finally understood Baiyu's confusing thoughts. She immediately laughed. "Aren't you tired of going around in circles?" Baiyu blinked her eyes and acted cute. I'm not tired. How could I be tired of talking to Sister Meng? Alright, the autographed photo needs to be a bit more conservative. He might become a pervert after being provoked." Luo Nan didn't react. He still hadn't figured it out. What the hell is an autographed photo? What does he want with that thing? Assistant Meng had already agreed with a smile. No problem. It's worth it just because of your saliva, baby." "Sister Meng, you're awesome. Also, if there's a congratulatory message on it, don't write this guy's name. Just write." Baiyu turned around and saw Luo Nan in a daze. She sent him another elbow. "What's your cousin's name again?" "Oh, his name is Peng." Luo Nan finally understood. He did say that he wanted to get Shi Wei's autographed photo for his cousin back in the practice room, but that was just a random excuse. He forgot about it in the blink of an eye. He never thought that Baiyu would actually remember it. Assistant Meng laughed. "Don't worry about the name. Luo Nan, you have my number. Send me a message later and I'll ask Sister Weiwei to sign it. Then I'll let you know." No matter what the nature of the matter was, Luo Nan needed to express his gratitude since Assistant Meng was willing to help him. He immediately bowed. "Thank you, Assistant Meng. Don't leave anyone out." Baiyu tugged at Luo Nan and raised an eyebrow. "What do you think? I'm a good friend, right?" "You're a good friend." Luo Nan gave a thumbs up. Honestly speaking, he was a bit touched. Even though this little girl's gossipy nature was quite terrifying, her merits were quite clear. The door to room 5627 opened once more at this time. Cat Eyes and Gouda came out and the group met up in the corner. The BHD trio let out sighs of relief when they saw Cat Eyes. They were even pleasantly surprised. Bayu was the one with the fastest mouth. She immediately shouted, "Teacher, where did you go just now? It's not like I can replace you guys on stage. Since my teaching mission is complete, I can go anywhere." Cat Eyes answered casually and introduced Gauda to them. "You can call him Captain Gao. He's a professional security guard. If you guys are facing a calamity today, count on him for your survival." The BHD trio, Assistant Meng and Yu Qin were all stupefied. 2 seconds passed before Clara, who had top-notch communication skills, sighed. She stuck her fingers into her hairline and laughed bitterly. "Teacher Cat Eyes, I beg of you. We have a performance tonight." "Oh, I wish you guys a successful performance. I wish you all the best." Cat Eyes beamed as she wrapped her arms around Bayu and Clara's shoulders and led them forward. The atmosphere was thrown into chaos by Cat Eyes' casual words. But Luonan knew that Cat Eyes was pressuring him, warning him not to go and cause trouble. Calamity? Should I clear my name or not? Luonan originally wanted to go to the Mountain Creek Band's room and meet Emoya face to face. But Emoya sent him a message a step earlier, saying that they had already left the room and that they could meet up at the elevator entrance. "Okay, we'll head over first," Luonan responded. He didn't forget to remind Assistant Meng, "Let's go to the backup elevator together. The main elevator is currently transferring luggage. It won't be free for a while." Assistant Meng smiled and nodded. Before he could say anything, Bayu turned around and shouted, "Did you reserve the elevator?" "I did." "Then why aren't you guarding the elevator doorman? What if someone else takes it? The last wave hasn't even reached the ground floor yet. As long as you don't talk nonsense, you'll definitely make it." Bayu wasn't polite at all. She turned around and sent another hammer swing, but this time she missed. Playing around with a beautiful young lady felt pretty good, but Luonan was destined to not have much leisure time today. He had only walked a few steps when he received another message from Peony. Perhaps it was because Luonan had seen through Peony's drunkenness today, but this elite woman, who always had her own opinions, no longer needed to put on airs. She would look for Luonan to communicate with whenever she had something to do. This time she simply came to complain. "Trigate security has been investigated. All monitoring work has been banned." "Ha! The Xia City branch. You know about it, right?" "Oh, the Wilderness Explorers Society. You know about it?" "I'm talking about the Xia City branch. They've made a big scene. I don't know what's gotten into them, but they didn't hesitate to mobilize their military and political connections to take over all security work around the municipal plaza. They're sifting out sand right now." "Really?" Luonan subconsciously turned to look at God when he heard this. He inquired through the mission window of the Psychic Wave Network and confirmed that it was indeed the Society's handiwork. "Why is it so big?" "It's an order from above. I don't know the specifics." The short conversation on the Psychic Wave Network ended. It was hard for Luonan to not feel a bit guilty when facing Peony again. He grunted a few times in agreement, practicing all the tones and words he knew. In the end, he feigned concern. "The search work has been stopped?" "Definitely. Communication will take some time. However, we're still investigating the social connections of the target. We've made some discoveries. I've already sent the real-time information to the cloud space. It will be continuously updated. You can look it up at any time." A call came in just as they were talking. Peony swept a glance and picked it up in the first instance. Through Ink's perspective, Luonan could see the lines between Peony's brows and eyes curl. Her originally free and easy charm instantly turned exquisite and gentle. "How are you? Are you in a good state? Hey, is it appropriate to multitask?" Luonan felt that he had fallen into an awkward state of being miserably ignored. He was just thinking about whether or not he should end the call. A group of people had arrived outside the spare elevator in the office building. On the other side of the corridor, Hai Jing and the Mountain Creek Band came over with bags of various sizes. The two sides just happened to bump into each other. On the other side, Emoya was also on the phone. She was probably talking to a friend. She was chatting enthusiastically with a radiant smile. The sister and brother just nodded their heads in greeting. Hai Jing took command in the first instance and rushed everyone to the elevator. The office building had limited resources. The spare elevator left for Mingtang culture was transferred from the property elevator. It was located in a small compartment next to the fire escape. The elevator was only 7 or 8 square meters in size. The two groups, plus Luonan and the others, already had 14 people. Their luggage was more or less stuffed to the brim. As a security personnel, God instinctively furrowed his brows when he saw so many people crowded together. The first thing Clara did after entering the elevator was to look at the number of people the elevator could carry. She let out a breath of relief when she saw that there were 16 people. Luckily, we didn't exceed the limit. What's there to be afraid of? In any case, it's not our turn to run up the stairs. Baiyu spoke and her gaze hooked at Luonan. Her meaning was self-evident. She was used to messing around with Luonan, but she forgot that there were still a bunch of bastards who had slaughtered their way out of the underground circle. Especially since they were still drunk. The most lively of them all, Huang Xiangdong, whistled on the spot. Youngsters these days have a hierarchy? Their postures are worrisome at this critical moment. Emoya, what are your thoughts as the older sister? Emoya directly picked up the phone and just gave a middle finger. Though Baiyu was unable to incite Emoya, she was so embarrassed that she couldn't stand still. She shrunk behind Shui Yuan and Clara's shoulders. Luonan knew that he absolutely could not answer, or else there would be no end to it. He learned from Emoya and rolled his eyes. He tapped his wristband indicating that he had a call to answer. He squeezed out of the crowd and blocked the entrance to the elevator. He was rejoicing in his heart. Fortunately, Peony was communicating through a rubber band. He needed to transform on the mental plane. Otherwise, he would have leaked out everything with his troublesome method just now. Ma Lu laughed with a hoarse voice. You don't need to stand guard at the entrance. We're a bunch of people squeezed in here. It's hard to get a pin inserted. Whoever comes over will have to obediently line up. Come over and chat with Uncle Ma for a bit. I'll teach you a few moves. A certain person forcefully raised his seniority, immediately drawing a wave of hisses. But the heat in the elevator was really stirred up. Perhaps this was a good sign for tonight's performance. Luonan ignored this group of people. He leaned against the door frame and downloaded information from the cloud space. He felt a silhouette approach him as he was operating. The silhouette leaned against his side, but the silhouette had no intention of communicating. Luonan turned his head to look and greeted politely, Sister Shui. The person who came over was the drummer of the Mountain Creek band, Shui. She liked to use the Tesla coil to enhance her visual effects during her performance. She had the title of Electro Girl in the underground circles. As for whether this was a compliment or a derogatory one, it was up to the individual to decide. Shui crossed her arms over her chest. Her eyelids drooped and she looked a bit sleepy. She was incompatible with the impassioned mood in the elevator, and she ignored Luonan. Luonan didn't find this strange. People who took drugs couldn't be judged by common sense. As long as this person didn't delay tonight's performance, it wouldn't be a problem. He went straight to look at the downloaded information. There were a total of 5 people, including the new monitoring targets from before. They were all around 20 years old. Looking at their respective social relations records, they were quite normal. They were about the same age as their peers. If Luonan were to ponder over the densely packed network of relationships by himself, he would probably die from a headache. Fortunately, Peony had already organized the information beforehand. She marked out the most crucial information. They are all paid VIPs of the Sky Street community. And they are all very active in the private section, Xingmeng, which requires referrals. Sky Street? Where have I heard of this name before? Luonan recalled as he looked at the annotations. Peony's description was on it. Sky Street, East Asia's largest information distribution center for the entertainment circle. Oh, it's that. Luonan suddenly understood. Wasn't this the gossip community that Baiyu had logged into when she searched for the latest news on Shiwei in the morning? But what was that Xingmeng section for? Professional questions needed to be consulted by professionals. And the person with the highest level of gossip was undoubtedly Baiyu. Luonan turned around and waved at Baiyu. However, he really looked down on the heckling ability of the other people present. Huang Xiangdong felt that he hadn't caused enough trouble earlier. He shouted loudly when he saw Luonan. Hold on. Nanster, who are you recruiting this time? It doesn't matter. Say it out loud. This place is chaotic. Manager Hai can't hear you clearly. Luonan couldn't say much under these circumstances. Baiyu didn't dare to stick her head out. She was embarrassed to the extreme. All right. Everyone calm down a bit. Hai Jing felt that if they continued to make a ruckus, something would happen. He forcefully interrupted them. He saw Luonan's helpless expression, so he asked casually, Nanster, is there something you need? Fine. Everyone present was a professional anyway. He just asked directly, a friend asked me to ask what the main purpose of the Sky Street Community Xingmeng section is? Can someone with the authority to say it? The elevator went strangely silent for a moment when these words were spoken. Chapter 470. Luo Nan knew that he must have said something wrong, but he didn't know where it was wrong. As he looked around, all he could see were the rock and roll fans whistling and laughing. Baiyu, Shuiyuan and Clara were all avoiding his sight. Emoya also stopped the communication, a helpless expression on her face. Oh, there was also Cat Eyes. She had a typical mocking expression on her face. It seemed that she also knew about the inner workings of the game. If he had known earlier, he would have asked her. Luo Nan wasn't an idiot. He knew from looking at the situation that the Xingming edition was most likely the route of, the noble circles are truly chaotic. Forget it, pretend I didn't ask. Ma Lu laughed when he heard Luo Nan's words. He didn't continue to tangle with Luo Nan. Instead, he pointed at Emoya. Say, do you think your brother is pretending to be pure? Or really pure? Emoya would not answer such a retarded question. Okay. Who wants to dispel Luo Nan's doubts? Let's chat in private. Don't turn a deaf ear to my words. Hurry up and check your bags. If anyone dares to say that they're short weight, I'll make sure he or she works for the company for free for the next 2 years. Hai Jing finally brought out the cold-blooded style of a manager and forcefully controlled the situation. The two teams responded in a scattered manner. Luo Nan immediately sent a private message to Cat Eyes. Send me the relevant information. Don't worry, wait a few more minutes. Maybe some girl will edit it for you in private. Cut the crap. Alright, you are the boss. Actually, I don't know much about it. I only heard that the Star Dream version is actually the one-night stand version. The ones who are active in it are mostly flesh and blood. Occasionally there will be some naive ones. Of course, the main selling point was the male and female celebrities. They solve their physiological needs, while the other side enjoys the halo of fame. Some professionals even earn some extra money. That's about it. This should be considered semi-public, right? That's what I want. All right. The general situation was pretty much the same as what Luo Nan had imagined. He didn't waste any more time, immediately contacting Peony and summarizing this matter. He also delivered his analysis. The 5 surveillance targets are all ordinary families. They should be fanatical fans or prey. If there really was an intersection on this page, then the intersection point should be a certain celebrity. This circle shouldn't be too big, so it shouldn't be a problem to find the source of the infection. Hey, are you listening? Luo Nan gazed at Peony through Ink's perspective. At this time, that person was sitting quietly in a high-altitude restaurant, overlooking the entire municipal square from the window. But Luo Nan didn't know why, but he felt that her eyes weren't quite focused. You were just flirting with your lover a moment ago, and now you want to break up? Just as Luo Nan was about to call out again, Peony raised her hand and lightly brushed away the messy hair on her forehead. Her long and slender fingers just happened to block Ink's line of sight, making it hard for Luo Nan to see clearly. After a brief second, Peony responded, no need to repeat yourself a second time. What you're saying is that someone with stage 2 or 3 infections is spreading the mutated virus through sex in a small circle. The straightforward and accurate description made Luo Nan a bit uncomfortable. But this little stimulation seemed to have stirred up a certain part of his brain, giving him some subtle and unclear feelings. Did I miss out on some information? Hey, are you listening? Peony flipped her hand and flicked her sword back. Her words were exactly the same as what Luo Nan had said before. Yes, I understand. Alright, I'll get back to you as soon as possible. So that's it. Also, what's up? Peony cast her gaze outside the window. Her gaze just happened to meet Ink, who was hooked onto the windowsill. It was unknown when her eyes, which had been overflowing with light, had condensed once more. They were bright and clear. I wish you good luck, Mr. Partner. Thank you. Luo Nan's mind was filled with bewilderment. Fortunately, he had a clear direction of investigation no matter what. Even if part of the problem was solved, he still let out a breath of relief. The backup elevator had already hit the bottom and bounced back. The group of people were about to head backstage. But Luo Nan's mind was still undecided. He needed to ponder over how to deal with the gene dealer's challenge. Perhaps listening to the opinions of professionals and maintaining a distance from Emoya would be a decent plan? Luo Nan noticed 2 rather unexpected characters walking over to the backup elevator just as he was thinking. Around 10 seconds passed before the wooden door to the fire escape opened. 2 people walked in one after the other. People subconsciously looked over at the elevator, and many people's nerves instantly tensed up. Director Wu. The person who came over was the highest leader of Mingtang culture here, Director Wu Qingze of the Artist Department. Behind him was the second-in-command here, Haijing's immediate superior, Director Xia. Wu Qingze was also an acquaintance. Most people never expected that the big boss of the company would suddenly arrive. This was a true big boss, the kind that concerned everyone's jobs. Hello, Director Wu. Hello, Director Xia. Everyone saluted one after another. Even the normally arrogant and unruly members of the Mountain Creek Band had to put on a superficial act. Luonan didn't care. He just followed the crowd and lowered his head. But Director Xia, who had just passed by him, instinctively returned the salute when he saw Luonan like this. He nearly bent his back. Luckily, not many people noticed. Director Wu noticed that the composition of the people here was quite complicated, but their attitudes were quite amiable. He immediately found Cat Eyes. He nodded with a smile. Teacher Cat Eyes has come personally. Thank you very much. Of course, he didn't overlook the uniformed god. When he found out that it was the building's management, he greeted Assistant Meng rather politely. In the end, he greeted Assistant Meng out of respect for Shi Wei. As for Yu Qin, she was quite close with the BHD group. She was also young, so Director Wu ignored her. No matter what kind of attitude he had, the entire elevator room underwent a transformation with him standing there. The originally chaotic concept of hierarchy suddenly became clear. Under this subtle force, the person with the highest status undoubtedly enjoyed the position closest to the elevator door. Director Wu was unobstructed all the way to the very front. Director Xia and Hai Jing stood to his left and right, talking about the progress of their work and so on. As for the others, they mostly used eye contact in place of verbal communication. They would only raise their hands to cover their mouths and whisper to each other intermittently. No matter what, they were unable to return to the atmosphere from earlier. Luonan used his all-encompassing mental senses to take in everyone's expressions. He found the subtle psychological changes quite interesting. But soon, he felt the gazes of others observing him. Luonan raised his head and discovered that God was looking at him with a subtle expression. Cat Eyes was even whispering to him. Look, it's quite abnormal, right? What are you chattering about behind my back? We're talking about how we can serve you, boss. Speaking of which, on one side you're the boss enjoying star service. On the other side you're the little brother, bowing and scraping to others. How do you switch between these two modes at will? Are you schizophrenic? Or are you role-playing? Aren't you having fun? Luonan was speechless. The two circles were different. One was another. This was very normal. How was he schizophrenic? Sure enough, most patients are unconscious. What do you think, God? God didn't want to get involved in this matter, but he hesitated for a moment due to professional considerations. He still communicated through the psychic wave network. Mr. Luo, it's best if we completely control the situation. Don't let any unexpected situations occur. Before he could finish speaking, a new situation really did occur. Oh my, there are a lot of people here. Luckily, there are even more beauties. There was only one person on this floor who could be so pompous and frivolous. 2 seconds later, He Donglu entered the elevator with a swagger. Old Si followed beside him. This young master, who the vast majority of people were unfamiliar with, entered. Director Wu's thoughts are thorough. Alright, you over there. Go to Shi Wei's room and get me 2 pieces of that unfinished snack. Hurry up. I'll be on the car in a bit. If you really can't do it, I'll run down the stairs. Luonan was truly speechless. Surnamed He, you're crazy. Director Wu felt He Dongluo's targeting. He was stunned for a moment when Director Xia jumped out from the side. He displayed outstanding initiative. I'll go with Hai Jing. It'll be a bit more convenient this way. Surnamed Xia was already kneeling behind He Dongluo's back. He Donglu raised his eyebrows, but he didn't lose the opportunity to ridicule Luonan that easily. Okay. Then little brother, just make a trip for me. Run a bit faster. Maybe you can make it to the elevator. Before he could finish speaking, the jumping numbers on the panel of the elevator fixed. After a long back and forth, the elevator finally got into position and an electronic sound rang out. Director Wu, who was in front of the door, didn't think too much after receiving this prompt. In any case, the youngster He Donglu had his eyes on probably wouldn't have a good time. He wasn't willing to get involved, so he waved his hand at Director Xia. Hurry up and do it. He locked gazes with He Donglu as he finished speaking. They revealed smiles at the same time, switching to the social script. He Donglu seized the initiative. Director Wu, please. Young Master He, please. Director Wu, you're the host. You. Or is it Young Master He? Young Master He? The metal door closed to the side. It was like a flipped script that stretched the camera, causing the scene of the elevator room and the elevator car to blend together. Chapter 471. The reason why the person in the elevator car was said to be a professional woman was because of the strong impression her clothing gave. She wore a light gray slim-fit short suit and straight pants of the same color. She wore a slightly conservative black high heel. Every detail indicated her identity. The only thing that stood out was probably the silver-gray metal case she carried in her right hand. However, compared to her clothing, that extremely sculpted face was perhaps the best match. The calmer she was, the more a chill naturally seeped through. It made people feel that she should have an extremely serious personality. It was precisely this first impression, perhaps in addition to her tall and slender figure, that effectively strengthened her aura. Furthermore, there was a dense mass of people outside the elevator. She was alone, yet she didn't make any unnecessary subconscious movements. She stood steadily in the car and didn't even have the intention of walking out. She only used her bright and sharp eyes to sweep across everyone's faces. Wow, a hardcore. As an assault bassist, Huang Xiangdong immediately felt that this was a rarely seen and challenging type. He subconsciously sighed. However, as soon as he spoke, he discovered that his voice was unusually loud. In fact, the ambient noise had suddenly been lowered, vividly setting off his idiotic moment. Huang Xiangdong hurriedly shut his mouth. As his voice faded away and lacked a follow-up, some kind of silent power surged out like a formless dark cloud, instantly covering the entire elevator. In that instant, the whispers that even Director Wu couldn't avoid after coming over were completely erased. Director Wu, who was standing at the very front, was a little stupefied. Silence made people even more sensitive. In this strange silence, he suddenly discovered that there was a problem with his own reaction. He didn't know when, but he had turned his face to avoid the professional woman's gaze. Also, his body had moved to the side. He was an executive of Mingtang culture. The 56th floor was his company's exclusive floor. He was undoubtedly the head of this place. But what he felt right now was like 2 years ago, when he had welcomed Madame Halder from the Castle Financial Group. That cold capital tycoon, facing a group of overly enthusiastic and noisy company executives, had used only his eyes to shut everyone up. What the hell am I thinking? Director Wu suddenly snapped out of his daze. He felt that his current reaction was mysteriously awkward. Actually, I'm abiding by the rules of ladies first, and first down, first up, right? Right? He subconsciously shot a glance at He Donglu. This young man was still blocking the entrance of the elevator. He looked even calmer. But what was with the abrupt interruption just now and the shrinking of his shoulders and chest now? He only knew that he had to make a choice. It wasn't up to his heart. He had to consider many things. Since this was the case, the answer was actually placed right before his eyes. Perhaps the moment He Yuan opened her mouth was the beginning of the collapse of the rhythm of life that he worked so hard to maintain. Luonan couldn't refuse, but he also wasn't willing to take the initiative to break it. He could only listen to the arrangements of fate. Outside the elevator door, He Donglu had enough of this treatment of being completely ignored. He turned his face to face He Yuan. He was so angry that his hands were already trembling a bit. You really think of yourself as a secretary? I'm your little brother? Excuse me? He Yuan's eyelids were slightly drooping in the elevator car. She temporarily cut off the gaze that had a clear direction. When she opened her eyes again, she walked straight outside, pushing aside a close blood relative who was blocking her way. Old C followed in silence. He Donglu staggered outside, and the people behind him split open like waves, causing the already faintly forming passageway to become even wider. As for the end of the passageway, it was still a bit blocked. Luonan was right there. He Yuan walked past Director Wu's position in 2 steps. Her feet didn't stop as she quickly gave instructions. The security bureau is working. Send 2 people from your company to follow. If there's anything you need, please cooperate. Damn. I finally understand what's going on. Director Wu still had a bit of doubt in his heart, but young master, he had called her sister twice. Even if he had doubts, he had to suppress them. He faced He Yuan's back and said, okay. Then he was a bit hesitant. Who should I leave? Director Xia had a flash of inspiration at this time. He volunteered once more, Director, I'll bring someone with me. That's fine. Talk less and do more. Keep in touch at all times. Director Wu's head was swollen from the series of matters. He also knew that this matter was related to the Security Bureau and that it was best not to blindly meddle with it. He was disinclined to think too much, so he agreed to Director Xia's suggestion. Then little Luo, follow me. Director Xia's gaze drifted over to Luonan as he spoke. He saw that Luonan's reaction was calm, and he knew that he had gambled correctly. He clenched his fist in secret. Yuan just happened to brush past Luonan at this time. Gouda reacted quickly. I'm the building's property manager. Follow me. Yuan nodded imperceptibly as she spoke. In fact, she was pointing at Luonan. Luonan let out a sigh of relief. He even had the time to give Emoya a reassuring gesture before turning around to follow. Right after he turned around, his face inexplicably heated up. Yuan led the group of people through the safety passageway very quickly, disappearing from everyone else's line of sight. Gouda closed the door after waiting for the relevant personnel to enter the room, isolating the inside from the outside. This place instantly turned quiet. Ever since Cat Eyes was reduced to a believer, she became more and more casual when dealing with people and things. She didn't care about etiquette and the like. She had already found a chair to sit in and she blurted out, "You're all professionals after all." She was suddenly startled. Her gaze streaked across Luonan's face before falling on Yuan. Hold on. Wouldn't a certain someone and his sister be separated like this? And he even ended up shedding tears of gratitude. So I'm the only one who's a vile character in vain? Luonan was stupefied in place for a moment. What she said seemed to be true. Yuan didn't feel awkward because of Cat Eyes' words. She found an open area after entering the room. She crouched down and placed the silver-gray suitcase on the ground. She entered the password and everything proceeded in an orderly manner. Cat Eyes looked at Luonan. "Boss, what are your thoughts right now?" Luonan recovered from his sluggish state. He didn't know what to say at first, but his mind spun a few times. He unconsciously recalled the series of reactions he had in the elevator a few minutes ago. Soon he grinned and laughed bitterly. "I'm thinking that if I were to be together with Moya and encounter an unexpected situation, I'm afraid I would really be done for if I were to be as conflicted as I was before. How would I have the free time to choose at that time?" Cat Eyes couldn't help clicking her tongue twice. "Your awareness has risen all of a sudden. Hey, Vice President He. I didn't know that you actually had the talent to be a teacher. Is the He family an instructor in the military?" Yuan was silent for a moment. She waited for the silver-gray suitcase to open to ring out. Only then did she speak softly. With this awareness, Mr. Luo should be able to be more focused. This was the third time she had mentioned a similar request. Luonan took a deep breath and responded directly for the first time. "No problem." Chapter 473. The suitcase was filled with equipment specially arranged for Luonan. It was very simple. There was a flesh-colored protective suit, an electromagnetic handgun, matching parts and a certain amount of ammunition. The protective suit was a tight-fitting standard, so Luonan needed to take off his outer and underwear before he could put it on. If this was before, Luonan would inevitably hesitate for a moment when faced with the gazes of several people in the room, especially those of the opposite sex. But right now, Yuan's focused voice was still ringing in his ears. Mulling over these things would be a bit too petty. Luonan completely exhaled the breath he had just inhaled and exhaled. He directly unbuttoned his clothes, and his mind naturally attached to the equipment in the suitcase and Yuan's introduction. He didn't care about anything else. The Hidden Snake Type 2 protective suit is mainly used for protection against stab and poison. It avoids being ambushed in a chaotic or vile environment. However, you still need to be careful of the head area when you aren't wearing a protective mask. Using this kind of protective suit required a certain level of skill. Yuan stood up to help Luonan put it on as she explained. Due to their current special circumstances, it was hard to avoid physical contact. Some parts of the body were quite sensitive, and this was 10 times, 100 times more stimulating than the attention of the eyes. "Do you need help?" Cat Eyes' wicked interest was no longer satisfied by watching from the sidelines with a smile. She took the initiative to stand up and walk forward. She was clearly asking for Luonan's opinion, but she had already started. She slid down while sticking to his waist. To the side, Yuan's brows furrowed slightly. Before she could speak, she heard Luonan say, "My calf is a bit loose." His tone was calm and natural. Cat Eyes was startled when she heard this. She raised her head to look at Luonan's expression. "Let's not talk about anything else." His eyes were half open and half sleepy. One side of his gaze was focused on the suitcase, looking at the accessories that he had yet to put on. The other side was probably his internal body experiencing the minute sensations after putting on the protective suit. Aside from this, he had no other thoughts. Under the repeated stimulation, this youth, who had always been wavering between two life circles, finally made a decision. He swept away those meaningless and distracting thoughts, gathered his mind and faced the present. It was fine for others, but Cat Eyes, who had long since become a member of Luo Nan's closed system, could clearly feel the power bursting forth from the core region. The majestic psychic pressure formed from this slowly covered every region of the system, regulating all sides and bestowing order. Cat Eyes was too close to him to the extent that she didn't even have the time to digest it. According to what President Ouyang said, this is the materialization of the power of the psychic wave network. He Yuan looked at Luo Nan. Do you feel uncomfortable? Nope, I feel pretty good. Luo Nan responded with a single sentence. At the same time, he reached out to press his hand against his belt. He gently stroked it as if he had understood something. Cat Eyes also walked back and reached out to touch the breastplate. Is this the president's new achievement? The psychic wave network directly interferes with reality? Yes. In theory, the power of the psychic wave network can be mobilized to interfere with the material plane through the relevant components. However, the current conversion consumption is a bit high. Less than 1 out of 100 is saved. Is President Ouyang prepared to personally escort a certain person? If there's a mortal threat, yes. Tisk this treatment. Cat Eyes was speechless at first, but she immediately shook her head. Then why do we need to beat around the bush? I feel that this toy is too flashy and impractical. It's too inefficient. If we really do encounter a powerful enemy, then as long as the psychic wave network is fine, we can just suppress them with a mental storm and sweep them away. He Yuan did not speak. She just shared a video in the mission window. The video showed an interrogation room. Looking at the angle, it should have been taken from a surveillance camera. The camera was aimed at an unfamiliar face. This person sat in an interrogation chair with his hands fixed to the board. His head was lowered and he didn't say a word. Who is this person? Cat Eyes was still the first to ask. The one who answered was God. This is the driver of the target, Luo Yuan's flying car. During the interrogation, he was unable to reveal Luo Yuan's whereabouts. He was brought back to the nearby police station. It's him? Luo Nan's attention was also drawn over. All he saw was that this person's face was ordinary. The corners of his eyes and eyebrows were drooping. He looked a bit gloomy. God added another sentence. The video is currently fast-forwarding. It was just as God said. The video was fast-forwarding at a high speed. The 2 police officers participating in the interrogation were rapidly switching their movements. Their voices turned into chattering noises. However, the driver was different. He maintained a fixed posture from beginning to end. He didn't say a word and the corresponding scene didn't change at all. He Yuan explained softly, he's been like this ever since he was brought back for investigation. Pay attention to the clock on the wall. The video returned to normal at a fast speed. The time on the wall clock was close to 5 p.m. Luo Nan lowered his head to check the time. It was 10 minutes ago. When the needle of the old-fashioned clock in the interrogation room crossed the top of the scale, the driver, who had been sitting in silence all this time, suddenly stretched his neck. His eyes were cast directly in the direction of the camera. His fixed gaze was as if he was looking at them through the lens of the camera. Luo Nan could see that the driver's face was constantly twitching from this moment on. His veins and muscles bulged from time to time, and the corners of his lips twisted under some sort of force. Words were spat out from the corners of his distorted mouth. All the inferior ones will be eliminated. The outstanding ones will be reordered. We have plenty of space, but we will absolutely not tolerate the entry of filth. These words were like the ravings of sleep and the words of madness. They were like a gust of sinister wind, rising from the bottom of everyone's hearts. The police officer in charge of the interrogation couldn't help but stand up. It seemed that he wanted to confirm whether or not the safety confinement facilities were complete. But right before his eyes, the twitching of the driver's face fiercely spread to the rest of his body. The extent of the twitching increased sharply, so much so that he completely lost his human form at some point. He was like a candle that had gone overboard, melting under everyone's gazes. The police officer in charge of the interrogation was nothing more than an ordinary person. He had never seen such a terrifying scene before. He retreated in a flurry amidst his screams, but he couldn't maintain his balance. He fell on his butt to the ground, bumping into the table behind him. The colleague next to him didn't perform any better than him. He flipped over his chair when he jumped up. The surveillance camera calmly recorded everything. The driver, who had melted into wax, remained in his chair. He spent roughly 30 seconds before his figure and appearance returned to normal. He maintained his posture of looking straight at the camera from beginning to end, but his face was completely different from half a minute ago. Everyone on this side saw the face clearly. Luo Yuan. Although Cat Eyes hadn't personally experienced the situation at the time, she had done her homework. She immediately hissed, "So he's the driver." The problem of Luo Yuan's disappearance under the watchful eyes of everyone at the time was most likely solved. She looked again at Luo Yuan sitting in the interrogation chair. This mysterious person originally possessed extraordinary male charisma, but after witnessing the melted wax remodeling process just now, no one dared to look straight at his face. At this time, the security personnel outside had already rushed in. There were also ability users from the society inside. Under such circumstances, Luo Yuan still faced the camera. He spoke in a manner that was neither hurried nor slow. "No matter which one it is, I will find it." Chapter 474. Cat Eye's confused state was delayed for a full 2 seconds. Only then was she able to force the corners of her lips to form a smile. Ability user clone body. Alright, a great discovery of creation. Her gaze turned to God and Si Guoxing. "What do you two think?" The other side was silent. Cat Eyes revealed an expression that said, "See, I knew it would be like this." She conversed with He Yuan once more. "Vice President He, if my ability to understand is correct, you're saying that the person in the video is a clone? And an ability user at that? This is a preliminary judgment. So you're saying that this person is purely the result of human labor?" He Yuan didn't directly answer this question. She just listed the data. There are currently at least 30 laboratories in the world that possess a complete technological system for asexual reproduction. Moreover, there are around 5 laboratories that possess a certain amount of technological reserves in the field of rapid growth. However, we have yet to receive any intelligence on anyone that dares to violate the relevant provisions of the Comprehensive Clones Prohibition Convention and push this forbidden technology into the application stage. And then? Not a single one of these 30 laboratories is capable of attaching extraordinary power to a clone organism. After all, after decades of research, the current conclusion is that only extraordinary power can bestow extraordinary power. Then why did you say? But this judgment of this matter is based on reality. We can only start from the facts and make inferences according to current laws. This is a potential power that possesses a complete asexual reproduction technology and a complete set of extraordinary power. Using technology to create an entity and then bestowing it with extraordinary power. If that's the case, then it's not unreasonable. Cat Eyes rubbed her chin. Do you have a specific direction? Probably a little. In recent years, a batch of living material providers have appeared in the wilderness. Oh, I've heard of it. The gene exchange, right? It's a very famous black market. It's said that an enormous underground trading network has been formed. They specialize in providing genetic samples and living material for experiments to the major laboratories. Living material experiments? Luo Nan raised his eyebrows. He was a bit sensitive to this word. After all, his grandfather's crimes back in the day involved human experimentation. It was an important item that could not be avoided. It was also a charge that was very hard to wash off. So Luo Nan never dared to say that his grandfather was innocent. He could only pursue the academic achievements that his grandfather should have. At this time, Cat Eyes' imagination began to run wild. You're saying that this gene exchange provides various large laboratories with some sort of clone body. We have no evidence of such a transaction. I understand. The government, the military, and the funds of the major consortiums. Such high-level funding providers won't leave behind any obvious weaknesses. If they were to continue chatting like this, they would stray from the topic. He Yuan decisively changed the direction and revealed the intelligence and conclusion. At present, the understanding of the various parties regarding the gene exchange is very limited. However, there is a basic consensus. This force belongs to the wilderness, and among them, there is one or a few people who possess a type of supernatural power that can be used on a clone body, perhaps including the effect of rapid proliferation. Because of this ability, as long as there are qualified donor cells, it can quickly divide and multiply, forming a complete living body in a short period of time. It's like a bomb, but it's just like a bomb. Create a clone body and then completely vaporize it in a short period of time? Are they demons? To many laboratories they might be more like gods. Cat Eyes' ridicule hit the nail on the head. Luo Nan had a pensive look. If He Yuan's judgment was correct, then this could explain why he was unable to draw Luo Yuan's life sketch in his living starry sky back in the underground passageway. If the target itself was just a clone body that was rapidly proliferating and growing, then it simply wouldn't have the opportunity to form self-awareness. It was reasonable that no traces could be found on the mental plane. Cat Eyes and He Yuan continued to discuss related issues, but Luonan didn't participate. He wasn't like these two who had an extensive and deep understanding of the inner world. Even though he had crammed a few courses, his understanding of the law that only supernatural power could bestow supernatural power was shallow. Therefore, it was useless for him to listen to such matters. Under such circumstances, the only thing he could consider was the superficial things. For example, how should he deal with this enemy that was hard to sense? One of Luonan's greatest reliance against enemies was his mental senses. This was especially true in the living starry sky. He could sense the enemy and even attack from a distance, seizing the initiative. This kind of observing and attacking mode was already a move and rhythm that he was used to. He felt that something was wrong if he couldn't use it. This was a problem that belonged to him. Of course, he could only solve it himself. Luonan's consciousness wandered the living starry sky. He had no train of thought for the time being, nor did he have a goal. He could only first sort out his own sealed system clearly, checking to see if there were any loopholes. Then he pushed forward layer by layer from the inside out. Of course, it was impossible for any loopholes to exist within his own sealed system. This was more like a ritual. Chapter 475. Soon, Luonan found his target, the so-called clone body of an ability user. Of course, he was unable to directly observe it. He was able to lock onto it through the indirect projection of the other people present. Right now, the clone body was still in the form of Luo Yuan. His entire body was shackled from head to toe, and he seemed to have been injected with tranquilizers. However, these methods seemed a bit redundant. This person seemed to have lost all ability to think. He sat quietly on the chair, his eyes empty and without luster. Luonan took advantage of the fact that there were people next to the clone body to probe, but it was hard for him to get any results. To the side, Cat Eyes felt that Luonan was scheming something big, but after suppressing herself for a while, her death-seeking mentality prevailed. She wanted to stir up a bit of trouble, so she poked him in the open. "What are you planning?" "Nothing." Luonan responded very honestly. He didn't know what Cat Eyes was thinking. Otherwise, he would have said, "You overestimate me." He really did have an attitude right now and he was using his brain. But using his brain didn't mean that he had a direction. What he lacked the most right now was a clear train of thought. He wanted to lock onto the thread of Luo Yuan, but this clone body without any mental characteristics had cut off the move he was most proficient in. Patrolling in circles around his own territory clearly wouldn't bring him any inspiration. His current state was, to put it bluntly, very suspiciously like he was putting on airs. What should he do? Before Luonan could break through this obstacle, someone in the outside world contacted him. The message came from Peony, who was leaning against the window. "I've sent the latest analysis to the cloud space according to the information you sent. Pay attention to receive it." "Ha! What are you ha for? I thought you were in a daze." "Hee hee, my dear partner. I invited Mr. Ink to follow me for work needs, not to provide you with the convenience of peeping. Please abide by professional ethics, okay?" Luonan didn't try to explain. In any case, from the results of his peeping, Peony seemed to be smiling yet not smiling when she said these words. Her attitude was subtle. She might not necessarily be angry. Perhaps she was teasing him more than anything else. He didn't want to waste time on these minor details. He simply pretended not to hear and downloaded the information from the cloud space. He didn't want to be distracted. He just wanted to find some inspiration from the information. After all, his greatest discovery today, the stair-like distribution between ordinary people and ability users, including the capture of a few suspected second-stage infected targets, all stemmed from this. Even if he couldn't give him inspiration, he could at least give him some luck, right? The information Luonan downloaded from the cloud space was the latest information Peony had obtained from the Astral Dream edition of Sky Street. It was basic information extracted from the government and a few social organizations and related departments. It mainly reflected the stock composition of the Sky Street Gossip Forum, the specific management personnel, the practices of each moderator, and their basic family situations. In addition, there were also some entertainment news, paparazzi gossip, and so on, involving the more active celebrities in sensitive sectors and the people around them, as well as the relevant situations of some people in society. This information was extremely trivial. Luonan roughly scanned the basic data section. It was simply fragmented. It was a tangled mess. However, Peony only used a few simple data sequencing calculations and then readjusted and combined them. For some unknown reason, she was able to scoop out a few extremely important clues. Moreover, the directionality was extremely clear, realizing a directional focus. It was reasonable and convincing. Out of the 5 suspected target superiors, 3 of them are popular idols. These 3 people did not belong to the same company, and their relationship with each other was very ordinary. However, in the past 2 years, they had all carried out many prostitution activities. A relatively high-level supply chain is involved here. Based on the activity trajectories of the prostitutes and the corresponding prostitutes, the suspects of the Jingxian Club. Hey, are you listening? Luo Nan had really been a bit distracted just now, but Peony's words had exposed him. He was a bit astonished by Luo Nan's keen senses. Peony didn't have any intention of getting angry. Is it? You have important matters to attend to? Well, you could say so. Since she was this considerate, Luo Nan didn't need to hide anything. I obtained some inspiration from you. I'll definitely ask you for guidance regarding data analysis later. Peony rested her chin on one hand as she looked out the window at the ink combing her feathers. She was a bit bored to death. Though we've been partners for a few days, I still have to pay for advanced courses. If you really do have something to attend to, then go do it. Actually, I feel that everyone's mission should have been completed by now that we've investigated to this point. Really? This involves a few special circles. I don't believe that Trigate security needs to go deeper. Let's not talk about this. I will report this information to Trigate security at the same time. As for whether or not we should continue to investigate, that will be up to the client to decide. Luo Nan really didn't put too much thought into this matter. He just said, okay. If there's nothing else, then I'll get off work early. I'll find someone to apologize to in passing. Luo Nan spoke a few polite words. I'm very sorry for delaying your date. Chapter 476. Even though the society had already come to a conclusion, Luo Nan still needed to reconfirm it. This helped him establish his own logic. From the looks of things, it was indeed an ability user. The body's basic strengthening, bones, muscles, and neural networks, as well as its special texture and structure could be seen with a glance by an insider. Of course, there was the possibility of technological modification. One needed to make a further judgment from the functions of the body. The changes in the human body's functions were more hidden. One needed to start probing from the internal organs, blood flow, nervous reflexes, and so on. It had to be comprehensive. But the problem was that the target was nearly 10 kilometers away from Luo Nan. He could only indirectly capture it through the living starry sky. Relying on this method to mobilize a small amount of soul strength was like scratching an itch through one's boot. Luo Nan scratched a few times but was unable to grasp the gist of it. In the end, he could not help but ask He Yuan, can we meet that one side? That one? An ability user clone. I think I might be able to find a new clue. Before He Yuan could respond, Cat Eyes had already exclaimed in admiration. You know it's a bomb, yet you still want to go? Luo Nan simply ignored her. He Yuan's expression did not change. She answered, sure. Cat Eyes was shocked, but He Yuan immediately changed the topic. Let's meet at the laboratory. The clone will be transferred to the branch laboratory soon. You just happen to be going there. The branch laboratory. Where is it? Luo Nan did not react for a time. He simply asked, but Cat Eyes made a fuss over nothing. Shangding? He Yuan first instructed Si Guoxing to reserve the elevator. Then she answered, according to the established arrangements, we will go to the Shangding building and spend the night there. Considering the direction of the enemy's current information leak, inviting Mr. Luo there should be the safest choice. The Shangding Grand Xia was where the Xia City branch office was located. This name was fake. Its true security lay in the fact that the Xia City branch president, Ouyang Qin, spent all year long in the laboratory on the 13th floor of the Shangding building. Any enemy who wanted to make a move there would first need to eliminate a peak extraordinary. Sure enough, the treatment is extraordinary. This time Cat Eye's praise was genuine, but she immediately reacted. Her eyelids jumped twice. You mean the enemy is very likely to be an organization that can provide a clone with the energy it needs to divide and multiply in a short period of time cannot be underestimated. If it's an individual, then their abilities are even more inconceivable. Shi Yuan did not directly come to a conclusion, but the meaning behind her words was as such. Now, Cat Eyes truly understood why the society had mobilized so many people. Right now, she even felt that this sort of protective measure was too conservative. Even if she guessed correctly and bumped into them, there was still some doubt as to what effect it would have. The communication between the two of them was already very straightforward. The final layer of paper was only because of their safety instincts. They didn't want to directly mention such a fearful and powerless target. The problem was that Luonan had diverted most of his attention to the ability user clone body halfway through. His train of thought simply couldn't keep up. He only felt that deep probe would do as soon as he got there. It was simple and fast, and there was no need to beat around the bush. Let's meet in advance. I think the source of the clue should still be in the square. When Cat Eyes heard this, she immediately put on a solemn expression. She solemnly raised her hand and declared, "Can I withdraw now?" Hiyuan patiently explained, "We aren't sure how dangerous the plaza is. Preemptive detection might attract the other party's attention, which means preemptive contact. Isn't this the same as capturing the target? Then let the hundreds of thousands of people in the square explode into the sky?" Luonan was stupefied for 2 seconds. He looked at Hiyuan's expression and finally came to his senses. He didn't say anything for a time. The atmosphere in the room turned a bit silent. A few seconds later, Hiyuan spoke softly, "The vicinity of the plaza is under martial law. Low and high altitude traffic levels have been sealed. We will first take a car to the periphery, then we will transfer to an aircraft. We should be able to reach Shangding in 40 minutes. I will notify the relevant personnel to send the target clone body as soon as possible. If everything goes smoothly, you and President Ouyang will be able to research and exchange relevant topics tonight." Luonan still didn't say anything. He just nodded. "The car is ready. Let's go." The group of people crowded around Luonan and headed for the backup elevator. Siguoshing was standing guard over there. He was a bit surprised when he saw Luonan and the others come over. "We still need to wait for around 3 minutes. Hiyuan paused for a moment before nodding. "Got it." Cat Eyes watched from the side. She felt that this was quite interesting. From Hiyuan's perspective, this 3-minute delay could already be considered a mistake. Clearly, her forceful confrontation with Boss Luo had caused her mind to fluctuate a bit. Was it worth it? Everyone was waiting for the elevator. Luonan's head was lowered in a daze. It was unknown where his thoughts were going. There was still time. Cat Eyes thought for a moment and moved closer to Hiyuan. She laughed lowly and said, "Serving a capricious boss is quite stressful." Hiyuan glanced at her and actually admitted, "There's pressure." However, Luonan could faintly sense that when his soul strength smashed over in a venting manner, the target should have received some external stimulation. There was some feedback and it appeared in the living starry sky. Oh, it wasn't the target himself. There was no mental activity over there. What truly responded was the surrounding environment. Luonan's venting smashing attack did not control the range well. Not only did it smash onto the clone body, but it also affected the surrounding people. Fortunately, it was used for penetrative probing. It had no destructive power. But this kind of smashing attack was like throwing a stone into an abyss. An echo came from far away, reflecting the situation at the bottom. There was a circle of people inside and out, and in the middle was a living dead. It was impossible for the living starry sky to directly map the life sketches of the living dead. But when Luonan's soul strength swept over, the interference mode he specially set up to observe the internal energy programming of the living dead reacted with the target and the surrounding normal people. The target strengthened muscles, joints, nerves. These superficial fragments of information, under the unification of the fleshly combat theory, inadvertently formed a certain aspect of the internal energy programming. Even though it was just scraps and a claw, even though it was weak beyond comparison, it still revealed its unique characteristics. But this alone wasn't enough. The key lay in the fact that the interference probe mode Luonan set up was targeted at the living dead. It was targeted at the empty shell of a fleshly body that didn't possess self-awareness, powerful bodily functions, and astonishing explosive power. Any normal person would naturally radiate life psionic pressure, and the probing waves would be completely obliterated into nothingness. One was raised and the other was suppressed. The outward appearance was a clear difference between the peaks and troughs of the waves. It formed a unique echo that only Luonan could hear. If this was the case, Luonan's inspiration was suddenly stimulated. He didn't hesitate at all. He went to do it. Incorporeal ripples undulated in the living starry sky. It was as if Luonan had transformed into an enormous bat at this moment. He emitted a special sound wave, and it spread to all the regions covered by the living starry sky. He had done similar things before, but he had limited the range and made directional probing attacks. But now, he had transformed his soul strength into a special wave to cover the entire living starry sky. He had taken the initiative to probe millions of people. His impression of this was unprecedented. He had never even thought about it before. If Luo Nan's control was a bit careless, if he messed up the interference mode, if the level of his power was off, and if the probing waves were not dissolved in time, he would attack millions of people at the same time. He would become public enemy number one. This was no joke. Fortunately, Luo Nan was used to operating on the mental plane. The buffer zone was large and his control was sufficient. Nothing unexpected happened when the wave of probing went down. The vast majority of people passed by in a daze. They were completely unaware that a deranged young man had greeted them at the same time and received a special response. At this moment, Luo Nan could probably say that it was as if he had the help of the gods. The method he used in the living starry sky was controlled to near perfection under the burning state of his inspiration. Even He Yuan, who was close at hand, didn't detect it. Only Cat Eyes, who was within the system, had a slight reaction. But she didn't quite understand what Luo Nan had done. She just faintly felt that her boss seemed to have done something extremely subversive. Her heart throbbed a bit. She really was a bit scared. After all, Luo Nan's performance a few dozen seconds ago was quite irritable. For this reason, she used the channels within the system to privately inquire. "What the hell are you doing?" Luo Nan didn't respond. The difference between transcendental observation and active contact with the same target was far greater than the difference between passive radar and active radar. And a considerable portion of the information belonged to the type of absolute reaction. He was unable to precisely control it. Waves of echoes came surging back. An enormous amount of information quickly filled all of his perceptual channels. The large machine of his self-system had to operate at full capacity to digest and identify the information. Now every believer, including Cat Eyes, felt more or less pressured. It was only because of the difference in cultivation and knowledge that there was a difference. Cat Eyes turned slightly pale. Luo Nan couldn't care about anything else. He used all of his mental energy to identify the information. He searched for the unique voice print amidst the large amount of disturbing noise. He gradually determined its number, location, and level. Ding. The backup elevator arrived. The elevator door opened, but it was empty inside. Si Guoxing, who was in front of the control panel, reached out and pressed the button to open the door. He cast his gaze toward Luo Nan. In reality, the gazes of everyone in the elevator were focused on Luo Nan's body. If this core character didn't move, then no matter how the others moved, it would be meaningless. Luo Nan's sudden eruption of irritable emotions made everyone confused and even more helpless. 2 seconds passed and Luo Nan still didn't move. He still had one hand on the wall and his head was lowered. It looked like he was thinking, but it also looked like he was continuing to be angry with himself. He Yuan thought for a bit and took a step forward. She said softly, "Mr. Luo, we're going to..." "Wait a moment." Luo Nan interrupted He Yuan's words. It was as if the bright and beautiful clothes that Ji Qiong was used to were stripped bare in an instant. The face and dignity attached to it were torn to the ground, and then they were ruthlessly trampled on. Ji Qiong's legs went soft. She could no longer stand, but she subconsciously struggled to save herself. She faced Manager Sha, who she was most familiar with, and screamed, "He's talking nonsense. He's talking nonsense. Hurry up and call for help. Manager Sha. Hurry up and save me." No matter how much Ji Qiong struggled, Luo Nan's hand remained extremely steady. There was no difference between his hair and his wrist. Luo Nan tried to reason with Ji Qiong, who was excited to the point of insanity. "I know that I wasn't very polite just now, but this information cannot be hidden. Otherwise it will cause a disaster." Ji Qiong didn't care about a disaster. Right now she was 100% disaster. She struggled and cried, and her volume was 10 streets louder than Luo Nan's. Luo Nan frowned. Cat Eyes coughed and reminded him, "You can ask in a more private place." Luo Nan shook his head. "The answer must be made public. Let others hear it." Luo Nan's gaze shifted as he spoke. The elevator door 20 meters away had already opened. Little Yu, who should be running errands, did not go in. Instead he jogged back. "Hey, you guys are going too far." Little Yu. Even though Manager Sha approved of Luo Nan's actions 100% in his heart, he was worried that the situation would get out of control and cause an even worse accident. Therefore he shouted at Luo Nan to stop. Little Yu didn't pay attention to him at all. He ran faster and faster. Luo Nan gazed at this young man who was filled with righteous indignation. He suddenly spoke, "Go back. Everyone mind their own business." Little Yu continued to speed up. "Are you taking care of others when you do this?" Bang! The special gun barrel produced electric currents and sound disturbances. The metal bullet was accelerated by electromagnetism before it shot out. It pierced straight through Little Yu's shoulder, and flesh and blood splattered violently in an instant. Little Yu suddenly staggered and leaned to the side. He half knelt on the ground, groaning miserably. "Oh no!" Manager Sha cried out in alarm. His volume was not much lower than Ji Cheong's. Half a second later, Manager Sha's screams and his thoughts were both interrupted. He did not understand at all why the situation had suddenly turned out like this. Luo Nan grabbed the stupefied Ji Cheong with one hand while his other hand maintained a firing stance. The electromagnetic gun's muzzle moved down slightly. This time he locked onto the vital point of Little Yu's back. He Yuan stepped forward without a sound. She used her shoulder to block the muzzle and her figure. She spoke softly. "Get back." At the same time she spoke, Little Yu's low groan came from 10 meters away. His syllables gradually turned clearer. "You're really going too far. Good genes and bad genes are handled by different groups. They're arranged well. But to run into an unreasonable target like you is really bothersome." Though Luo Nan's line of sight was blocked, his senses on the mental plane were more intuitive than his eyes to a certain degree. He listened to the strange sound coming from not too far away. He searched for deeper veins in the surroundings and spoke in passing. "Am I good or bad? Then you really are asking the wrong person. I'm afraid my answer isn't objective." Before his voice faded away, He Yuan suddenly charged forward from above the long corridor. Luo Nan instantly expanded his field of vision, but he still could not see Little Yu's figure. This was because he and He Yuan had collided together in the first instant. It was unknown when, but a cold light flashed in He Yuan's hand. A sharp blade tore through the air, but it did not hit its target. Instead, the shockwave of sonic boom that followed caused the corridor to distort. The shockwave was far too fierce. The density of the air was seriously out of balance. He Yuan and Little Yu entered a state of close combat. Back at Frost River Reality, He Yuan had used the move Kill in 10 steps to instantly kill an Ablatum Knight of the Order of Justice, Ghost Thunder's arc-light blade. Unexpectedly, it was completely useless. After 4 consecutive collisions, the sonic boom grew higher and higher. In the end, it turned into a distorted and strange sonic boom that scraped against one's eardrums in pain. Manager Sha and Ji Cheong fell limply to the ground. They did not even make it through the first wave of impact. It was as if a heavy fist had bombarded their ears. "Hurry up and leave." Cat Eyes pulled Luo Nan to retreat. His opponent's fleshly side ability was at least B rank. The aftermath of the impact possessed sufficient lethality. It was best for them, the mental side, to put some distance between them. Luo Nan did not move. He shook his head and said, "It's over, for now." He Yuan returned to Luo Nan's side as soon as she finished speaking. She withdrew her arc-light blade, but her drooping hands were trembling slightly. Even without direct evidence, it can be seen that the gene exchange maintains a high level of attention towards the current situation of the mutation infection in Xia City. She paused for a moment and said, "If Mr. Luo hadn't come to the plaza today and made a new discovery, the opponent's progress would have been above Trigate Securities." Cat Eyes agreed with this judgment. "This Little Yu really is a person. It's just that he's been replaced by a clone body. Have you figured out the replacement node yet?" "Not yet. Mr. Luo?" He Yuan felt that Luo Nan had been silent for a bit too long, so she deliberately greeted him. Cat Eyes simply hooked onto Luo Nan's arm. She laughed and said, "Boss, if this really has something to do with your outsourcing business, then Her Majesty Empress Wu or Trigate Security clearly found the wrong contractor. There must have been no public bidding, right? But how do you know that he's a clone body? It seems that aside from laboratory testing, there aren't any effective methods of distinguishing him." By listening to the sound to determine his position. Luo Nan responded with a low and hoarse voice. "Bullshit. That's the truth?" Luo Nan had no interest in bickering with Cat Eyes. Right now he appeared to be carefree and relaxed, but he was actually quite exhausted. On one hand, he had to monitor the sound source of the clone body coming from the entire plaza. On the other hand, he had to lock onto the mysterious information channel coming from the polar domain. On the other hand, he had to make a timely response to the plane of reality. Doing 3 things at once made him quite exhausted. But then again, the 2 useless words he exchanged with Cat Eyes gave him another inspiration. Since a certain person was so idle, he might as well give her a bit of work. She was unable to monitor the polar domain, and there was no need to make an immediate response to the scene. But as long as the corresponding details and characteristics were clear, she could share the relevant information and act as a monitor. Cat Eyes felt quite bad being covered by his gaze. Luonan felt even worse. The fine strand of soul strength was still lingering in the surroundings. It remained in a weak region from beginning to end. It wasn't like President Ouyang's warping of space and time, nor was it like Her Majesty Empress Wu's earth-shattering power. However, maintaining close monitoring of it was an extremely exhausting matter. Luonan originally had a wraith sign under his command that specialized in this sort of work. But now that the Darksider species had been sent into the cloud world, and it had even been forcefully planted into the body of a mushed-mouth ape, it showed signs of growth and evolution. Luonan was unable to call it out no matter how hard he tried. He had no choice but to personally go into battle. He continued to pour resources, and the consumption of his mental strength grew greater and greater. The only thing that could be considered gratifying was that Luonan's pure observation mode had made new contributions. Though he had locked onto the opponent didn't have a reciprocal response. The opponent didn't hide too much. And so, Luonan slowly came to a realization. The core of this strand of soul strength that came from the polar domain wasn't He Yuan. It wasn't Cat Eyes. It wasn't even Luonan himself. As for Ji Cheong, Manager Sha, and the pile of clones that were like rotten meat, none of them were its target. Cat Eyes was a bit impatient from waiting in the dark and noisy hallway. The logistics really took a long time. How about we retreat first? I feel that asking about the romantic history of that long-haired beauty will help boost our spirits and clear our thoughts. Of course, if there's someone who can hear the location and determine the location of all the clones in the municipal plaza, then just pretend I didn't say anything. Luonan was quite capable, but the focus of his attention was no longer on that. Cat Eyes withdrew her hand from the crook of his arm at this time. She went to pick up the unconscious Ji Cheong and Manager Sha. She had the self-awareness of being Luonan's assistant. He Yuan didn't raise any objections. After all, guaranteeing Luonan's safety was the #1 priority. If Little Yu had really listened and gone upstairs during the fight just now, then no matter how suspicious they were, they wouldn't have taken the risk to make a move. He Yuan arranged a few more details to the logistics team, then indicated to Luonan to move. Luonan went, "Oh," and slowly began to move. But He Yuan patted his upper arm just as he took a step forward. "Mr. Luo, the gun." "Oh, I forgot." Luonan was still holding a one-shot electromagnetic handgun in his hand. The safety was still on right now. He smiled at He Yuan, turned off the safety and stuffed the gun back into its holster. He Yuan spoke softly, "That shot was very stable. But if you can't confirm the threat level of the target in the first instant, then the restraining effect on the leg is better. It's also fine on the lower abdomen, which can cause sufficient damage. At the same time, if there's a misjudgment, the current medical conditions can save the situation." She paused a bit after speaking to this point, but within 10 meters, a direct hit to the head or chest isn't a problem. "Secretary He, does your family's boss run an assassin company? Speaking of which, is there anyone who can help?" Luonan raised his hand, "Give me one. Sister Yuan needs to react in time in case something unexpected happens." "Don't jinx it. Seeing that you're the boss, I'll give you the long-haired beauty. We can pretend that we didn't see you taking advantage of us." Luonan didn't respond to this kind of vulgar joke. He walked over and took Ji Cheong. Originally, with the degree of cracks in the wall, the rats wouldn't be able to pass through, but these catalyzed clone bombs showed corresponding capabilities. The young rats in front of them that had yet to fully grow exploded. After a few waves of explosions, they forcefully widened the crack and opened up a path of flesh and blood, giving their brethren space to escape. In this way, in front of the wall, behind the wall, and in every corner, there were shadows of rats leaping about. It made people dizzy and they couldn't even count the number for a while. Boom! The loud bang and the explosion happened at the same time on the cracked wall. The side wall of the reinforced concrete instantly broke open. Gravel flew everywhere and dust flew everywhere. The rats that had just broken out were instantly crushed into pieces by such a powerful explosion. The ugly meat patty that had been crawling along the wall was also hard-pressed to escape. Its entire body was torn into several pieces, and its silver-gray body fluid sprayed out. But most of it evaporated into nothingness within the flames. In the next moment, an exoskeleton armor strode in through the hole in the wall. It was painted with a special azure color like the sea, and it had a fully sealed helmet with multiple edges. It showed that this was a deep blue walker. In a certain sense, it represented the highest combat power of an official soldier of the world government. The one controlling the deep blue walker was God. After breaking through the wall, the distorted flames around his body spread out, covering the rat tide in all directions. He used the format of fire to deal fatal damage to these suspected carriers of the gene samples. This was the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Or perhaps it should be said that this was the embodiment of the importance of the reserve team. Hiyuan had sent the 2 bodyguards to drive the car when they had just exited the elevator earlier. In fact, it was a code to activate the deep blue walkers. The 2 former elite burners of the military were C rank at most in terms of their unarmored abilities. They could wear the deep blue walkers and part of their abilities could enter the B rank range. They were enough to hold their own. Hiyuan didn't reveal her 2 trump cards even when she was fighting with Little Yu. It would be a lot easier to mobilize them now. Do a complete sweep. Collect. Don't let go of any body tissue. Hiyuan naturally raised the level of treatment once again after this incident. God acted according to his orders. Before the logistics team arrived, he would first do the cleaning. However, the situation just now was far too treacherous. It exceeded common sense. After he collected a few pieces of the ugly meat pie, he couldn't restrain himself for once. He took the initiative to ask in the mission channel, "Vice President, is this a nest? You've seen one before?" "Yes. I've seen one when I was carrying out a mission in District 87. Later, I used the main laser cannon on the ship to eliminate it." District 87. That's a mature body. You're saying that what we see right now is a nest larva? Cat Eyes was unwilling to be left out. She joined the discussion. A nest? Luo Nan actually knew the relevant general knowledge, but he had to wait for the others to expose it before he connected the theory with reality. He cast his gaze toward the last remaining piece of meat pie on the ground. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, it would be very hard to imagine that this was the legendary factory that produced low-end mutants. It was the fatal source of the genetic pollution of the era of distortion. The so-called nest was something that only appeared in the middle of the era of distortion. It was said to be the product of the Earth's natural environment being completely distorted. It was a deformed biological factory. It was like a methane pool of mutant nature. It gathered countless DNA fragments, causing them to collide and combine with each other to finally produce large amounts of mutant creations. The vast majority of these nest larvae possessed serious genetic defects when compared to the early natural mutants. Moreover, they would soon become food for the surrounding vicious beasts. But it was in this form that the mutant DNA fragments spread throughout the world like a plague. It was said that these DNA fragments had strong expressions and were very difficult to completely degrade. The powerful mutants wouldn't be fatally affected, but it was like burying a ticking time bomb for the surviving normal birds and beasts and the vagrants of the wilderness. Due to the rapid spread of large amounts of mutant DNA, the world government had entered an active defense phase 40 years after the mutant calamity. The species of mutants throughout the world continued to rise without end. It had to be said that this was greatly related to the appearance of the nest. Moreover, no one was able to say for the time being what effect these large amounts of foreign genes would have under the current genetic background. But the academic community basically held a pessimistic attitude. Hiyuan had asserted in class that the lingering poison brought by the nest wouldn't be apparent to humans within 1 or 2 generations. But as the population continued to multiply, the mutant DNA would play a more and more important role in the genetic process of the race. This was, without a doubt, an era of genetic pollution. Before the Third World War, there were approximately 10 million species and a billion genes on Earth. But 40 years after the war, not counting the mutants, the number of native species had sharply decreased to 700,000. Over 2/3 of the genes could only be seen in the gene library. Luo Nan pursed his lips. His expression was grim. He felt a bit embarrassed. Everything was clearly within his grasp. The other party didn't detect his observation at all, but they still used ruthless methods to play him. Any opponent that came from the polar domain really couldn't be underestimated. The building's security personnel and the society's logistics team arrived at practically the same time at this time. After a short negotiation, the logistics team relied on the tiger skin of government authority to send the security personnel away. They quickly gathered over here. Luo Nan stood next to the deep blue walker, who was taller than him by half a body. He didn't look at the bag. He just stared at the crack on the ground. It seemed that he wanted to see flowers from within. In reality, he had locked onto the soul strength that came from the polar domain. The other party was still lingering in the surrounding area. It seemed that he hadn't finished. Fine. Actually, he was observing Luo Nan in secret. He was probably very interested in Luo Nan. Chapter 480. At 6:20 in the evening, the rehearsal ended in the municipal plaza. The performance was about to officially begin. During the warm-up period, the hundreds of thousands of people in the plaza roared like a tsunami. Even underground, one could feel the slight vibrations. Luo Nan and his group entered the underground parking lot of the Tonghui building at this time. They sat in a dark-colored special police transport vehicle. Since it was specially designed for special police officers wearing exoskeleton armor, the vehicle was quite large. Gouda and Si Guoxing maintained their deep blue walker equipment and sat upright in the vehicle. It was still quite spacious. Yuan communicated with the logistics team and turned around. She walked into the back of the vehicle and closed the door. Then the vehicle started. The samples collected in advance have already been delivered to the Shangding building. No interceptions? Unmanned drones. Cat Eyes was very baffled. The other party is quite patient. Could it be that the gene samples have already been sent out? So these bits and pieces are meaningless. How's the plaza? All targets have been locked in. The follow-up plans need to be evaluated. The two ladies exchanged a few words and turned their gazes to Luo Nan at the same time. Luo Nan was daydreaming. Cat Eyes glanced at him. Are you mute? Luo Nan still did not respond. Right now he and the visitor from the polar domain were in a marvelous state of equilibrium. The visitor had locked onto Luo Nan's body and was observing his every movement. Luo Nan was aware of the visitor's observing actions, but the visitor was completely unaware of it. It was hard to say who had the upper hand in such a situation. Luo Nan's level was a bit higher in terms of the realm of observation. But in terms of reality he had fallen into a completely passive situation. He wanted to trace back several times but he was interrupted every time. This was because he had bumped into a few clones scattered across the plaza several times in a row. Luo Nan would have been very happy if he had done this an hour earlier. But right now his psychic bat wave covered the entire living starry sky. The information he sent back included all the clones within a 20-kilometer radius under his surveillance. The information overlapped with each other, greatly reducing the value of the information. At most, it could serve as a verification. Well, this also proved that the visitor's methods were quite similar to Luo Nan's. They both used some kind of medium as a transfer station to realize the ultra-long distance transmission of information. Luo Nan had his believers and the visitor had his clones. It was very fair. The surveillance and anti-surveillance states were maintained in this sort of equilibrium. She continued to look at the information. Soon she discovered a new problem. Does the enemy have eyes in Trigate security? According to the diagram drawn by the boss, there are currently clones appearing in the vicinity of several monitoring targets of Trigate security. What did Her Majesty Empress Wu say? Actually, it was more direct to have Luo Nan and Peony, these two frontline intelligence agents, communicate with each other. Luo Nan had previously thought that even if Her Majesty Empress Wu knew of this matter, she would most likely arrange for Peony to coordinate with them. But should they uncover their identities as partners? Just the thought of that situation made Luo Nan feel awkward. However, the feedback Yuan received was more or less unexpected. Her Majesty Empress Wu said that Trigate Security terminated the commission contract with the firm 10 minutes ago and settled the commission. Right now, it's very hard for us to find a reason to get involved through this channel. The contract was terminated? Cat Eyes cast her gaze once more at Luo Nan. Though Luo Nan had yet to speak, he displayed astonishment. He had once heard Peony say that Trigate Security might shrink back, but he never expected them to shrink back this quickly. If the factor of the gene exchange wasn't taken into account, just the so-called shady dealings in the entertainment circle was enough to make Trigate Security, which had a military background, retreat? Such a big reaction. It's either lack of confidence or a lack of confidence. Maybe. But digging up information is a matter for the future. Right now, we still need to ensure that Mr. Luo safely returns to the Shangding building. Then what about the gene exchange in the nest? This is the center of Xia City. It turns out that someone can place a mutant nest anywhere in the vicinity at any time. Share the pressure together. Join hands to solve the problem. Yuan's attitude was like that of a seasoned politician, but Cat Eyes liked it very much. They'll go crazy. A call came in before she could finish speaking. Yuan picked up the call and greeted calmly, "Hello." The conversation was very simple. It ended very quickly. He Yuan gave a slight explanation when faced with Cat Eye's curious gaze. A company responsible for the security of the municipal plaza is asking for information. They directly contacted you. This company has eyes and ears all over the world. Yes, Sky Blue Security. The one under Quantum Corporation? Cat Eyes and He Yuan cast their gazes at Luonan, but Luonan still didn't have any reaction. Luonan knew that Sky Blue Security was nearby long ago from Peony. What he was concerned about right now was when he would be able to completely extricate himself from the enemy's clone body node monitoring network. Right now, the transport vehicle had already passed the outermost node. The distance between them grew larger and larger. There should be a limit to the extension of the enemy's soul strength. 700 meters. 800 meters. 900 meters. It was broken off. Amazing. The range of his senses could extend to nearly a kilometer by relying on a single node. According to Luonan's own experience, the difference in the observation radius of the main body and the node was around 10 times. If he didn't have the living starry sky as an observation mode, it would be pretty good if he could reach 100 meters purely by relying on his mental senses. Being far away from such a powerful person gave Luonan a feeling of relaxation. It was as if he had come out from deep water. It was as if he had rushed out from the encirclement of mosquitoes and bees. It was refreshing and bright. Luonan unconsciously let out a breath. Cat Eyes looked at him. You really are abnormal. Luonan grunted. Since he was already free, he could talk about some things. I just felt like someone was spying on me. He Yuan and Cat Eyes would have to consider these words if they were spoken by someone else. However, the words came from the mouth of Luonan, an expert in mental senses. The meaning was completely different. Now, Cat Eyes' body suddenly went taut. She was still able to use her mental senses to scan the surrounding environment within the sealed vehicle. Of course, she didn't discover anything. Right now, the transport vehicle was moving through the flow of traffic in the underground lane. Its appearance was quite eye-catching, but it was very difficult to follow and observe it. He Yuan asked, when did it start? It's been a while. Maybe it was after we fought? It's a lot better now. Her mouth said maybe, but she was certain in her heart. As an expert in the mental side, she had this advantage. She could push everything to an illusory feeling. God reported in a timely manner, there's still 400 meters until we enter the exclusive passageway. He Yuan gazed at Luonan for a moment, then contacted the staff of the society. She issued an order a few seconds later. Execute according to the original plan. After the order was issued, the transport vehicle began to change lanes. It headed toward an underground tunnel that was marked as forbidden to pass through. The indicator light of the tunnel automatically turned green when the vehicle arrived 30 meters before the tunnel. The authority verification was passed. A second later, the transport vehicle drove into the interior of the tunnel. There were no other vehicles other than the transport vehicle in the two-lane tunnel. It was spacious and unobstructed. This tunnel led directly to the internal passageway of Ku Wang's communications building. According to the plan, they would be able to reach Apron 76 in at most 5 minutes. But Luonan suddenly felt a change at this time. The refreshing feeling of being free of pressure suddenly vanished, and the corresponding feeling of being spied on came. And it wasn't the kind of clear directional observation from before. Instead, it was a directionless, oppressive feeling of danger everywhere. It was completely unknown where it came from. The transport vehicle drove into the interior of the building. The two-lane road ahead turned into a single lane, and the speed of the vehicle slowed down accordingly. This was a freight passageway that led directly to Apron 76. With the level of Luonan's mental senses, he could already sense the activated flying shuttle and the security personnel in the surroundings. The problem was that the terrible feeling of being spied on grew stronger and stronger. Or perhaps it could be said that it was no longer spying on him. It was an offensive type of oppression. It was like an enemy brimming with malice had come to bully him. Oh, there was a subtle difference. It was like. Chapter 481. A trembling sensation swept across his skin like a wave. From his scalp to his fingertips, it was as if he had been electrified. Luonan's mental senses and the living starry sky were simultaneously activated by this stimulation. They broke through the cramped passageway and extended and danced within the complex environment of the building. He was like a spider spinning a web or a bat emitting sound waves. But He Yuan suddenly said to the side, "Someone's catching up to us." Luonan raised his head in a daze. He didn't understand how He Yuan's senses were more timely and accurate than his. Someone has intruded into the tunnel without permission. He Yuan added a reason. Then the surveillance footage was shared in the mission channel. Luonan saw a young man who seemed to be a hip-hop biker. He was riding his high-horsepower motorcycle, rumbling as he charged into the private tunnel. Since he didn't possess legal authority, his own wristband issued him a stern warning. The young man didn't react to this at all. The speed of the motorcycle he was riding on suddenly dropped in the next moment. The SCA's AI system had taken over the motorcycle. The direction and throttle were locked down. The motorcycle's speed began to drop rapidly until it came to a complete stop. But the young biker had no expression on his face. He just got off the motorcycle. Not only did he abandon the motorcycle, he even tore off his wristband and threw it away. Then he ran madly towards the depths of the tunnel. Of course, the most important thing was the zero feedback from the living starry sky. This made Luonan instantly understand the identity of this person. Ability user's clone body. 3 seconds later, the people on the transport vehicle saw this young biker begin to crazily run alone at a speed of over 60 kilometers per hour. Moreover, as time passed, his speed continued to increase. In the end, he only used about a minute to force his way into the building's cargo passageway. As for the passageway being closed due to the unauthorized opening, the biker smashed in with a single punch. The cargo passageway already had an upward slope at this time. The young biker's figure leaned forward. Later on, he simply used both his hands and feet. He was like a vicious wolf on the hunt, more like a human. Speed of 90 kilometers per hour. Estimated contact in 75 seconds. God didn't ask if they should speed up. This was because the current situation was that even if they accelerated to tarmac 76, this hungry wolf in human form would have ample time to block the group of people before they boarded the plane. Fighting a battle on the tarmac would only fulfill the other side's wishes. Cat eyes furrowed her brows as she looked at He Yuan. This kind of speed consumes an enormous amount of energy. With this rate of consumption, if he can still maintain his combat strength, he should be much stronger than little Yu. He Yuan's gaze turned to Luonan. Mr. Luo, what do you mean? The straight line distance between the two was less than a kilometer as they spiraled upward through the passageway. There was no need for the living starry sky to intervene. They had entered the range of Luonan's mental senses. Luonan carefully observed for a while, but in the end he could only shake his head. Individually, I don't feel any changes. But, the overall atmosphere is terrible. Luonan really could not think of a more accurate description. Although the most threatening target had already appeared in his eyes, this biker gang was only the tip of a spear. Behind him, there was a huge curtain of darkness that had already spread out, and it was gradually shrinking. However, his psychic senses and the living starry sky still couldn't capture its exact shape. He Yuan nodded in understanding, then ordered, "Delay the interception." God opened the back door of the transport vehicle the moment the order was issued. He tossed out a few tactical grenades in succession, including a powerful defensive grenade. The grenade had a delay and remote control function set. Due to the large curvature and slope of the passageway, the grenade rumbled as soon as it hit the ground. The biker gang on the other side of the passageway seemed to be unaware of this. They continued to advance like a hurricane. He Yuan didn't wait for the result. She walked straight to the front of the vehicle and stuck her back to the metal partition. Simple mechanical arms extended out from both sides as the scanning light fell. They stuck to He Yuan's body, installing and splicing metal components together. If one only looked at He Yuan, the metal components were like a special life form. They followed along her body, spreading up and down. They extended from her shoulders to her chest, her arms, her waist, her legs, and finally covered her face. This was undoubtedly the exoskeleton armor of a deep blue walker. This was the first time Luonan saw the entire process of a deep blue walker being armed. He was a bit stupefied for a time. The entire process was extremely quick. In the end, it didn't take more than 15 seconds. The current He Yuan had already transformed into a vicious killing machine armed with steel. The special metal on her body reacted with the format of fire, producing a sea-like deep blue radiance. It also seemed to have a rhythm of breathing, gorgeous and dazzling. He Yuan walked down the equipment platform after the exoskeleton was properly installed. She instructed in a deep voice, "Plan number 4. Abandon the vehicle if necessary." God and Si Guoxing responded in unison. He Yuan nodded to Luonan once more. She then pushed open the door of the vehicle and leaped up gracefully. She flipped to the top of the vehicle and crouched down quietly. "Yes." No one believed that a few tactical grenades could eliminate the biker gang behind them. They were both a branch of the fleshly body, but it was an extremely high-end type. Of all the ability users that Luo Nan had encountered, only Fairchild's Shield of Truth was similar to this situation, aside from the burner. In addition, Mo Luan's Dark Soul body involved the interference and transformation of the mental into the material. Though the nature was different, the characteristics were quite similar. Chapter 482. No matter what level of power the opponent was, the opponent must have learned from the lesson with Xiaoyu last time by changing his fighting style. He must have avoided self-destruction due to the extreme eruption of his fleshly body. But Luo Nan always felt that it was not that simple. After all, consumption was consumption no matter what kind of consumption it was. It was all paid out by this fleshly body. True ability users were able to obtain a longer standby time due to the coordination of body and soul. The mind and fleshly body interfered with each other. There was a rhythm to mediate between the rise and fall. This was the natural weakness of the clone body, but the opponent must have used some sort of method to make up for it. Luo Nan felt that it was extremely odd from the beginning. On the surface it was a motorcycle gang. But behind the motorcycle gang, an incorporeal net had long since spread open. A turbid curtain of darkness was propped up, and the thing that formed the curtain of darkness seemed to be drawing closer. Luo Nan didn't have much time to observe. Cat Eyes grabbed him and walked up the ramp. Si Guoxing was in front and God was behind, providing cover. Behind them, the motorcycle gang and He Yuan's battle had already smashed the upper and lower passageways full of holes. The electrical circuits and lighting equipment were the first to suffer. Under the powerful impact of the furnace-style heat, the degree of destruction was more thorough than at the Tonghui building. Soon, this cargo passageway could only be illuminated by the deep blue walker's body and the bursting flames of the battle. The battlefield where the two experts fought was not limited to the cargo passageway. He Yuan's deep blue walker's arclight blade burst out as Luo Nan's group ran wildly toward the parking apron. It forced the motorcycle gang to break through the outer wall and into the office area on the right side of the cargo passageway. And a short second later, the roaring heat wave tore apart another wall. It practically scraped God's helmet, collapsing the back of the passageway into ruins. Fortunately, today was the weekend. It was late and there were few people in the building. No one suffered for the time being. But if this were to continue, it would only be a matter of time before the entire building was destroyed, considering the aftermath of the battle between Tianbang and Mo Luan a few days ago. Why do I always encounter this kind of freak who demolishes everything with his bare hands when I'm with you? Cat Eyes' breathing became a bit hurried. The temperature within the passageway kept rising. The consumption of physical strength was secondary. What was worse was the chaotic aura that shuttled back and forth. It constantly stimulated and interfered with her. It was extremely troublesome for an ability user like her who specialized in mental senses. Luo Nan kept his head down and didn't say anything. Practically not a single one of them would enter within a 50-meter radius. They constantly dashed and shifted, feverishly sacrificing themselves while knowing to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. It was as if there was an awe-inspiring and orderly collective consciousness that led their overall actions. The more comprehensive the perceptual scene, the more one could feel the terrifying power within. God answered with a hoarse voice, "Old C and I have an effective attack radius of 30 meters. Our limit is 50 meters. We can't reach them at all. And the building is their natural cover. They are separated by floors and walls. Unless it's a destructive attack against the building, it will be very difficult to pose a threat to them. In other words, it would be very difficult for the two of them to display their greatest combat strength when facing the rat tide." Looking at the coincidental division of the range, these were certainly within the scope of their opponent's considerations. Cat Eyes gave Luo Nan a sidelong glance. Her meaning was, "Do you understand?" Luo Nan cast his gaze over. His pupils sparkled within the darkness. "Then there are only two people left who can pose a threat to these rats." Yes, two people who possessed the mental side of long-range perception. Cat Eyes and Luo Nan himself. "You can have the radius of 100 meters. Leave the periphery to me." Rather than saying this was a discussion, it was better to say that it was an order. "My perceptual radius is only 70 meters. That's still within 100 meters. My destructive interference just barely passed. It's enough to deal with rats. I don't need to be like a sniper who kills with one shot. The more lenient Luo Nan's response was, the more Cat Eyes found it unbearable. Actually, the two of them were quite clear in their minds. Cat Eyes' perceptual radius was not just 70 meters. Her destructive interference was not to the extent that it could not even put down rats. However, Cat Eyes instinctively displayed a lack of confidence when faced with the hundreds and thousands of Rat Tide, the illusory pressure transfer network, and Luo Nan himself. She was a pessimist to begin with. However, Luo Nan had already entered the circle of his own logic. All of her psychological changes were not included in the scope of his consideration. It was normal for young people to measure others by their own standards. Cat Eyes knew the problem with Luo Nan's way of thinking. But the more she understood, the more she felt the pain of being completely crushed. Needless to say, this was just a meaningless stab and confirmation. Essentially speaking, as a believer, she had to keep up with the rhythm of a god. She had to follow the orders of a god. Everything else was meaningless. Cat Eyes' teeth streaked across her lower lip, leaving behind a faint white mark. She purposely revealed a smile. Selling my life. I admit it. Chapter 483. Keep going. Luo Nan indicated for Cat Eyes to continue. He did not make his move immediately. Instead, he observed Cat Eyes' situation. Cat Eyes' self-evaluation was basically in line with reality. She belonged to the intuitive critical strike style, and she excelled in explosively killing a single target in a flash of inspiration. If he succeeded, he would be like an immortal, as if he could ignore the distance between time and space and be unpredictable. However, this method consumed a lot of energy, and the difference between the peaks and troughs was obvious. It was very difficult to achieve precise mechanical control. Against the rat tide that was coming from all directions, killing a single target was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. Cat Eyes was truly lacking in the crucial aspect of sustainability. Her first two strikes were able to kill accurately, but her third strike was a little off. Her fourth, fifth, and sixth strikes were even worse. She only managed to adjust to the seventh strike. There was about a 3-second gap in between, which could be considered a rhythm of ups and downs. After two waves of attacks, the tide of rats that surged within 100 meters did not decrease. Instead, it increased. The pressure on Cat Eyes was as great as a mountain. The motorcycle gang was in pursuit from behind, and He Yuan's destructive battle could bring disaster to the fish in the moat at any time. On her side, not only did she have to ensure accuracy, she also had to ensure efficiency. All of these were things that Cat Eyes was least proficient in. This was not a problem of attitude, nor was it a problem of ability. It was a problem of whether or not he could adapt. It was already not easy for her to maintain her rhythm. Luo Nan noticed that the t-shirt beneath Cat Eyes' open top was already soaked with sweat in just a few short seconds. The sweat stuck to her body. If this continued, her legs would go weak before they even reached the landing pad. This was a command error. Luo Nan immediately reacted, "Let's adjust a bit. We'll cooperate. I'll be in charge of cleaning up the perimeter and you'll be in charge of filling in the gaps." "What are you investigating?" Cat Eyes shouted with a hoarse voice. Right now, she was nearly driven insane by the rat tide. She was unable to pay attention to Luo Nan's performance. She was in a nervous and focused state. Giving Luo Nan a response was giving him face. "We don't care about the 100-meter range. No, we don't care about the 70-meter range. Just deal with the 50-70-meter range. Deal with our left flank." Luo Nan pulled Cat Eyes with a backhand, helping her shift her center of gravity. "The 60 to 70 meters are mine. The 50 to 60 meters are yours. You just need to deal with the ones that crash into the inner circle. What will you do? Don't worry about me." The memory of the structural skeleton of the dripping sword had already triggered Luo Nan's instincts as he spoke. Luo Nan used his instincts to drive his soul strength. Just like writing a familiar character, the condensation ring and the 5 auxiliary structures, amplification, acceleration, sharpening, explosion, and guidance, were like 6 strokes that formed a complete character with a single stroke. With a single thought, a complete character was constructed. Using the intent as a pen, one could write and draw, one could carve, and one could sculpt. When used on Luo Nan, who was a precision-oriented and mentally inclined ability user, there was an exquisite and tight-knit feeling of the intent reaching the form, and the intent leaving the form. Though the pressure on Cat Eyes was as great as a mountain right now, she was still able to sense Luo Nan's thoughts overflowing and leaving a mark in the void. And Luo Nan chose to use 3 seconds as a tempo interval for the sake of matching her tempo. Within these 3 seconds, The structural skeletons of the 15 dripping swords were engraved into the void. They absorbed the water molecules in the air, condensing into beads of water. Just as the water droplets appeared, the micron-scale structure of the water drop sword had already spread out in the void. Compared to the 15 water droplets, there were more than 5 times or even 10 times more. Cat Eyes made a rare mistake in her peak state. She was only able to blow apart half the body of a mouse. Luo Nan turned his head very keenly. Tired? Just as he turned his head, 15 blossoms of blood sprayed out at nearly the same time. They burst apart at the same time. An equal number of mice fell to the ground and twitched. Blood splashed from their pupils and brain juice flowed out. Then came the second wave, the third wave. Luo Nan and the others were running with all their might. The splashing water droplets and blood basically formed an elongated arc of a fan. It was like an incorporeal blade cutting through the air. Wherever the arc of water light passed, the surging and leaping shadows of mice fell to the ground in rows. The way they died could not be considered particularly tragic. The water droplets penetrated their brains and exploded. There was very little blood. Only the mice could be seen twitching on the ground. But such a simple way of dying had a treacherous and sinister coldness akin to a witchcraft curse. Cat Eyes had clearly guessed the method within, but she still needed to confirm it. The dripping sword? Yes. The speed of this move is all right. Luo Nan responded in passing, but he was still observing and evaluating in his mind. As they were cleaning up the mice, the motorcycle gang was constantly competing with them in hand speed. From time to time, a mist of blood would explode from within the rat tide. The frequency of this was extremely high. In the end, he nearly forgot about the technique of the dripping sword. He just locked onto the corresponding area with his thoughts. It was like a stroke of a pen, leaving behind incomplete traces. 3 seconds later, the water vapor would condense into a bead, and the bead would enter the eyes, enter the brain, and explode to claim their lives. During this process, there were mice that would explode into a bloody mist from time to time without any warning. Their vitality was used by the biker gang to vent their pressure. But on the left wing, within the area of 100 meters, the density of mice finally began to clearly drop. This was especially true in the area from 50 to 60 meters. Cat Eyes was there to check and fill in the gaps. This woman was getting more and more on the right track. Her performance was becoming more and more savage. The scattered mice that crashed into this area all had their heads explode. They died without a complete corpse, completely clearing out this area. In the end, Luo Nan didn't even notify Cat Eyes. He expanded the 70-meter defensive line outward until it reached 200 meters. At the same time, he filled in a semicircle in the direction of the right wing, forming a complete strangulation circle. When he discovered, his thoughts stirred. When he thought about it, he drew his pen and seized his life. It felt great, right? But after firing a few rounds in a row, no one could escape the feeling of emptiness. The consumption of Luo Nan's mental strength was considerable. Luo Nan remembered that he once viewed the large-scale splashing of dripping swords as pouring milk. It wasn't without reason. And more importantly, it was too dry and dull. Right now, Luo Nan viewed this process in a different way. From his perspective, he was no longer hunting and killing targets. Instead, he was using his mental senses to weave a net. He was using a special form to interfere with specific areas of the material world. These areas were where the mouths and noses of the mice drooled. The form of interference was the dripping sword. A specific form in a specific area formed the results he needed. It was like a simple equation. But looking at it this way, his overall method of interference was still clumsy. It was just a copy and paste method without any technical content. It was still a manual operation. Yes, on the plane of reality, there were still 3 seconds of time for the water droplets to condense. It was quite annoying. Many times Luo Nan had already succeeded. But because the water droplets had yet to condense and take form, the motorcycle gang was the first to explode their targets. Otherwise, Luo Nan's battle results would have increased by 20 to 30%. There must be a more efficient method. There must be. Humans were always lazy by nature. Or was it because the dripping sword was cultivated to the pinnacle that it had this kind of ability? The reason why the maintenance team was distracted in their discussion was because the situation over at Kuwang Communications Building had once again entered a controllable state. Following Luo Nan's wanton slaughter of the rat tide, The distance between their group and the biker gang chasing them had already increased to 40 meters. It was without a doubt that the assault against the rat tide had certainly divided a portion of the biker gang's attention. And under He Yuan's powerful strength, these problems had appeared in a rather astonishing amplification. Right now, the exit of the passageway leading to the hangar was in sight. It was at most 50 meters away. But at this time, Ouyang Qin and Gao Meng in the laboratory, Gao De, Si Guoxing, and the others in the cargo passageway all furrowed their brows. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.